Welcome to the Album Anniversary Podcast. Today's show is about All the Hype That Money Can Buy by Five Iron Frenzy. It was released April 25th, 2000, so it's celebrating a 25-year anniversary. I'm your host, Caleb, or Caleb the Spy on social media, and every day on social media I post about what I call album anniversaries. So, on the Album Anniversary Podcast, we take a look at a classic album, an album we love, or an album that's important to us on the anniversary of its release date. Albums on the show do often focus on alternative rock, punk, and my strange obsession with ska. And in the 90s, I was super into the Christian music scene, so that does come up often on the show, and today those worlds collide in grand fashion. I'm joined by Pam, and we're going to break down, again, All the Hype That Money Can Buy by Five Iron Frenzy. Pam, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be able to do a Five Iron Frenzy show with you.
Yeah, there's only 7 or 8 of them, so it's hot real estate, let me tell you. Because who doesn't want to sit with the most annoying fan in the world and hear him blabber on about his favorite band?
I don't know. It sounds fun to me.
So, have you had a chance to see Five Iron live?
Yes, I've seen them 3 times.
3 times, okay.
3 times. So, Halloween 97 in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
The Halloween show in the Twin Cities that I can't remember what year. Is that 98?
Was that the Holy Roller Tour with the Insiders and the W's?
Yes, I think
That's
so.
That's probably 98 then, yes.
Yeah.
98 or 99. It's probably 98.
Okay. And then I saw him in 99 at Cornerstone for the Youth of Revolting recording.
Wow, those are 3 good shows. I've seen them like 30 times, but I've got problems again. The one really cool thing is from this album that we're talking about, I did get to see them once play Giants live, and that feels like a big deal. So,
yeah. Me
and Scott, who I host the other show with, Scott, we drove down to Iowa to see them at Frank's House of Rock. This New Union-esque or whatever your little Christian club was that was down in Iowa. So we saw them at Sunshine, Sunshine.
Yes.
And then we drove down to Iowa and saw them the next day. And we stayed overnight in Iowa, and then we came home. And then I was like leaving for China, I think. I don't know. I was going somewhere at the end of the summer, so I packed as much Five Iron Frenzy as I could with a reasonable amount of driving into a summer. So,
right. But now when you have teenagers, now you're like, man, I'm really glad I did that when I had energy.
Yeah. We really wanted to do the Chicago show. We almost dragged the kids down there. Me and my wife is not a music fan, but she was like, oh, it'd be fun. That you should totally drag the kids. It just happened to fall at a really bad time work-wise for me. And that's what they keep on announcing shows like a month before or after my contract ends.
Oh.
And so like, I just don't feel right being like, yeah, I'm going to commit to doing this. And then I'm unemployed. Yeah. Like, I can't handle that. And so like, they keep on setting these dates that I can't travel because it's just the timing is bad. So hopefully they set a couple more dates. They just literally announced some shows, a show in Texas and a show in Oklahoma. I'm hoping they do eventually come here and hit the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
If they do, I'll make that show no matter what. No matter my employment status, I will be there with all my kids.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, my husband had reached out to them for booking here, but my suspicion is the venue that he works with is too small for them. It's like 100 people. So it might not be big enough.
I think they've gotten a little picky, and if I'm wrong, they can correct me. But the reality is that touring for them is not touring. So I think they're a little expensive to deal with because you got to fly a bunch of equipment in, and it's just more complicated than when they were touring around in a bus. So. Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. They all have real day jobs. This can't be a drain on their bank accounts any more than it probably already is.
Yeah.
So,
and we're out of the way.
Yeah, we're not close. You'd have to find a set. I mean, I think that's the thing is the way they're doing these. You'd have to find that second venue. So you'd have to find something in Iowa, or there's a venue down in the edge of South Dakota. That could be an interesting venue. I went and saw the Gaslight Anthem there. That was That was a pretty, actually, that's probably too big of a venue now that I think about it. But, so yeah. Anyway, well, that's cool. You got to see them live. That's some cool shows. Twice Halloween and then the Proof the Youth are Revolting. I didn't get to see them on that tour, so that's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was some of the most fun shows I've ever been to. Also, the one and only time I've ever been in a mosh pit.
Oh,
and it was to a Flowery song, which I find hilarious at this point in my life.
I definitely have been to mosh pits. That's for sure. I will say I was at that Halloween show, by the way, the Holy Roller one. So we were totally at the same show back in 1998 or whenever we figured it was. Because it was in like a gym, right? It was in like a gym at a church, I want to say. Because they were trying to do skating rinks on that tour, and they didn't do it here. But it was Justin McRoberts, the W's, the Insiders, and them.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally remember that show. I have a whole personal story that I can tell you. I'm not going to tell it on air, but it's a pretty funny story. All right, well, with that out of the way, let's jump in and tackle this album. All right, we are talking about All the Hype That Money Can Buy by Five Iron Frenzy, again, released April 25th, 2000. So a couple of funny things about this album. One is that it's their third album, which I think, to those of us who are with the band, it's their third studio album, because they released the EP, they released their live album, but really this is the follow-up album to our newest album ever, which is kind of funny to think about, considering really this is their fifth release, but again, their third album. So I think that's always kind of interesting. This was produced by Saki, or Masaki. I've always heard him referred to as Saki. And if I mispronounce your name, and he occasionally follows my stuff on Twitter. So if you listen to this and I mispronounce your names, I'm so sorry. They always called you Saki when they were talking about you in live. And I'm assuming it was mostly recorded at One Way Studio, which is where I think that was his recording studio. It says that on the liner notes, it says that it was mixed and mastered there. So I'm also assuming it was recorded there, because I think that was his studio, One Way Studio. And that really was the 5 Minute Walk studio in a lot of ways. And that's the majority of his producer credits are related to 5 Minute Walk. It's Rivulets and Violets, which I think was his band. It was Dimestone Prophets, Justin McRoberts, Brave St. Saturn, The Smiley Kids, Roper, Blood and Water, which is not a 5 Minute Walk one. They're a newer ska band that existed out of Iowa, I want to say. I don't know. That's a different ska band. I'm getting my Christian ska bands confused. But they were kind of existing in the late 2010s. That's in their kind of era. So he produced their album. He produced Lifesavers, which was a Michael Knott outfit. Obviously, he produced every Five Iron before their breakup. Post-breakup, Engine of a Million Plots and On, he has not done that, because I don't think he's producing full-time anymore. I think he's moved on to other things in his career. And then he's also mastered and mixed just a ton of other albums, and again, almost all of them related to 5 Minute Walk in some ways. So this album did reach 146 on the Billboard 200. I'm sure it was not there for long, but there you go. It reached that high. And that's really kind of all I have to say about some of those facts. Now, there's some other unique aspects to this album that I think are worth talking about. So, one, it has the goofy pre-track thing. Are you aware of this pre-track thing?
I am not.
Okay. Do you still have a CD of this, or do you only do it on streaming?
I just do it on streaming.
Okay. Well,
is it on the vinyl?
No, it's not on the vinyl.
Okay.
But on the CD, this is a thing that you used to be able to do. If you hit play and then hit rewind, it'll go to before track 1, and it plays this little thing where I think they just basically say, "Hey, what's up?" And then they start the album, which bands used to do. If you do it on Less Than Jake, their album, Losing Streak. If you do it on Losing Streak, if you hit rewind on Losing Streak, it's this whole guy. If you know that album, it starts with this guy saying, Harold Rollins, the old dude, Harold Day Rollins, and you're listening to Less Than Jake, and then the first song starts. If you hit rewind on that CD, there's him telling a whole story. It's like 45 seconds of him telling a story, and then the album starts. Five Iron didn't go that long, but it does have a goofy pre-track thing. So there you go. You learned something new about this album. The other thing, there's a bunch of these here, so hang with me, everyone. Can you tell I love this band? I'm a little obsessed. Okay, we'll move on. So Scott had just left the band, and although he gets writing credits on Hurricanes, I think that is one of the key things about this album. This is the first album they record without Scott. He had left the band. I don't want to get too much into the story of it, but essentially he felt like he wasn't a Christian anymore. And I think that's still how he would identify to this day. In fact, I know that's how he identifies to this day. And so he just felt like he couldn't be in a Christian band. So he left the band. They found a replacement. Sonny Johnston joins the band. He's originally from Jeffrey's Fan Club. That was the band he was in. And so he joins the band. So that is a key element to this. And I think it'll come up as in our conversation because he was the key songwriter for those first those first 4 releases, in my opinion. So what that leads to is kind of in my perception is this is the band kind of trying to figure out what to do next. And I think that is what comes through is who should write the music, how long do we hang on to this ska thing, which is just dying. And I think they were also trying to flirt with the mainstream a little. I think they were trying to figure that out. Now I don't think this lands. Electric Boogaloo, I think there was their real attempt potentially to go to hit some of that mainstream success, but it really didn't happen because of a whole other reason, which I've actually covered on the podcast. Go listen to my episode on Brace Yourself for Mediocre by Roper. I kind of go into the bit of the history of that album and how this all happened. And really what it leads to is Dennis taking over. He gets the writing credit on 13 of the 15 songs for the music. Now there's other people. In fact, everyone in the band outside of Brad and Keith end up getting some sort of writing credit on this album. And that's kind of what the band became. Dennis kind of took that lead, in my opinion. That's what it appears to be. Dennis took the lead and then everybody helped out a little. So again, it is a unique experience. And I think that helps when we get into talking about what we like about the album or what are things about this album that stand out or different things like that. That's something that history does kind of paint a picture of where this album came from. Mm-hmm. The monologue continues. There are guests. There are so many guests on this. And again, that is another part of this that kind of like this, I don't know, unique experience of this album. So I do want to call them out here. And there's a lot of last names here. So everybody gets to watch me bumble through a bunch of last names. And the first one's really hard. It's Carl Perazzo is how I want to say it. He is from Santana. He's a percussion player for the band Santana. And they got him to play percussion on this. I think he plays on Solidarity is the place I think he plays. He maybe does a couple other things here and there, but so that's cool. He's on the album. Randy Stonehill, he's a famous Christian singer from the 70s and the 80s. I think that's where he primarily had his hits. He joins for the song Solidarity as well. And you can get a alternative version of that on one of the 5 Minute Walk samplers. They have one without Randy Stonehill, and it's re-singing both verses. But again, that may be my obsession problems coming out that I know that. I didn't even have that in the notes. I just remembered it. Scott Kerr is on this. Justin McRoberts is on it. Brett Barker and Valentine Hellman of In Defense of Kesha. Well, Valentine's from In Defense of Kesha. That's a new podcast. You should check it out. They're both from the W's. They are on this. Jeff, last name too hard for me to attempt to pronounce. He does percussion on Fahrenheit and A New Hope. There's another guy named Gary who does percussion on You Probably Shouldn't Move Here. Big Lou, the accordion princess, does accordion on You Probably Shouldn't Move Here. Mike Busby is on piano on Giants. Ashley Watkins is the little girl on Giants. Shelter, which is a choir, are the guest vocals on World Without End. And then Krista Nash does the bells on World Without End. This is their most let's go get everybody to help us make a record album. And it's kind of silly that there's this many guest credits on it. But there you go. Again, I think it kind of shows a little bit of what was going on here is that they had a lot of ideas and they kind of were throwing a lot against the wall, just kind of see what sticks. And that I think kind of comes out in that. I have more to say, but I'm going to save it for the rest of the show. Sorry for the 20-minute monologue, everyone. We'll bring Pam back in. She's been here the whole time, just sitting there going, I can't believe I signed up for this. All right, let's dive into our questions then. So Pam, first question, how did you discover this album?
I was already a Five Iron Frenzy fan, and I do not remember buying this album,
Huh?
but we would have probably bought it at the Northwestern Bookstore at the Harmar Mall
Nice.
in Roseville. And I remember at the Cornerstone show in '99, they premiered New Hope and Ugly Day.
Yep.
Which is, I don't usually remember that much about a concert, but I remember that. And I don't know if it's because it's recorded, but I do
There's
remember.
a point of reference to go back to.
There's a point of reference, yeah. Yeah, so it was just... But I was also 4 months pregnant at this point, and so we're getting into the timeline where once I have kids, I don't remember things anymore.
Sure. So... But you were already a fan of the band, right? I'm assuming you kind of were coming to this because you had seen them. You had mentioned you had seen them in '99, and so you had seen them a couple times before this. So,
yep. Okay. Yep. I remember having the first album, the beginning of 1997, distinct memory, just standing in the living room, holding it in my hands, listening to it. Yeah.
The last time you were on the show, or one of the times you were on the show, I think it was the PFR episode. You talked about how like you would go to the record store as a kid. Did you bring your kids to the Harmar on Northwestern Bookstore and drag them around and kind of show them things there? Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. They've gone everywhere with us.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've been to that Northwestern Bookstore, and for those who are listening around the world, I know I mentioned Northwest Bookstore, Northwestern, whatever it is. That was the Family Christian Bookstore here in Minnesota. For some reason, Family Christian Bookstore really didn't have a presence until kind of right before its death as a retail store. They kind of moved in because there used to be a Northwestern Bookstore in Harmar Mall. Burnsville had one, and then Woodbury had one. Maybe there was more of them. Those are the big three that I remember. Yeah.
Every time you and Scott talk about Northwestern Bookstore, my brain immediately does a walkthrough through the Harmar. And I think it was the fifth or sixth time you guys mentioned it. And I was like, oh, wait, no. They're talking about Woodbury. That's a different layout.
Yeah. It is a fun time. I have a picture of me and Scott hanging out with the mascots at like theme parks where like they put on those big foam suits. So Bob and Larry, I have a picture of me and Scott hanging out with Bob and Larry, and my kid, one of my kids in particular, she always points out the picture every time she comes into my office.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I should probably get that online. It would probably embarrass Scott more than me.
Yeah.
Because I look good in that picture. He looks the exact same. It's amazing. I can't believe he still is. I look totally different, but that's a whole different story. So I went to Northwest Bookstore a lot, but I got this when I was in college. So 2000, I am in my third year of college. I think I'm a junior in college at the time. And so I was living out in Menominee, Wisconsin, which is just straight east of the Twin Cities. It's kind of the middle of nowhere. There was a Christian bookstore in Menominee, but they didn't really have music, and they didn't have any real new music. It was mostly kind of old, real mainstream CCM. It was a tiny little shop. And then there was one in Eau Claire, which was another place kind of a little further east. So I would usually come back to the Northwest Bookstore that then Scott wasn't working there yet, but I would come back to Northwest Bookstore at Woodbury. But I remember this was one of the first albums I ordered online, and I ordered it from their website or the 5 Minute Walk website, wherever they were selling this. And this showed up to my house a day before its release date. And I remember freaking out because I wasn't expecting it. This is the whole tracking and all those things, the notifications of delivered. I didn't have that. I mean, so I was just hoping it would show up at some point, and it showed up a day before. I remember coming home and going to the mailbox at my college house because I lived off campus with a bunch of guys, and I was like, there's a CD addressed to me. I know what this is. And I ran up to my room and blared it. And I'm sure all my roommates hated it because they didn't like the music I was. But this is one of those first albums that I remember buying through the internet and getting delivered to my house. I'm that old. Now we get into the big one. These next three, we're going to be here a while. You thought some of my shows were long. This is going to be the long one. I think we both have a lot to say, but Pam, what is it about this album that you love?
I think it's just such a good balance of dark, hopeful, reverent, silly. It is such a weird timeline
Yeah.
in our lives. We've Columbine was in 1999. It's before the 2000 election, and it's a year before 9/11. And I remember just thinking how ahistorical things kind of felt then when we were living it a little bit, and
Yeah.
the trajectory that I thought that the world was going on was kind of changing. And I think it's just an interesting snapshot of what was going on with people that actually had some insight into politics and religion, some of the changes that were starting to happen. Because this is probably about this time I start deconstructing. And probably a big reason is because, well, I know it's a big reason because of Five Iron Frenzy. Just the things that they brought up that I hadn't been taught, that I had never thought to think about.
Yeah.
And I was raised to not care about politics. Like, God works everything out. So, he puts into place who he wants into place. And so had a very hands-off approach to it. And now I'm trying to look back and be, what are they singing about? And I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff. I've got 6, 7 tabs open.
Yeah. You're right. That is a really unique time. It's post-Columbine. I was taking adolescent psychology at the time. And so we walked into class the day afterwards and our professor had not heard the news. And so we're all sitting there and she breaks into her normal lecture and we're all like, are we not even going to talk about the adolescent news story that's going on? And she was like, what? So we got to see her react to it in real time because somebody handed her a paper. This is how old I am. Somebody handed her a paper and she's sitting there. She starts reading it and she slumps into a desk and you can just see her processing this whole thing in real time. It was kind of crazy, but yeah, you're right. This is post Columbine, pre 9/11. So that's a weird space. And then yes, everything kind of changes post 9/11. That's a really unique spot for these 2000 albums to be coming out, especially you hit on it. This album does hit on, this is kind of they had always had some social commentary, but they go deeper on this album. They start to tackle, it's not just A New Hope. There's a number of songs that kind of start to tackle some commentary. I'll say social commentary and spiritual commentary.
Yes,
yes. They push in harder on this than any of their other albums in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree.
But yet in that, there still is, so there's this serious side of it. There still is this funny side of it. I mean, that's the crazy thing about this track list is you can go and you can kind of be like serious, spiritual, sad, funny, introspective, funny. It just has this weird breakdown. So it is a little bit all over the place in that regards. It jumps around from topic to topic. But yes, it is this, I think it is. It's pushing though further into all of those things than they maybe had previously pushed on some of their other albums. Mm-hmm. Do you hear the commentary ever about this album I think we were talking a little before off air. This is the album that I think gets picked on the most as least favorite. Have you heard that commentary from other people?
I live under a rock. No.
Oh, okay. You haven't. Okay. Interesting. Because I hear that. I mean, and I will say we were talking before, my favorite albums list of all time. This is my lowest ranking Five Iron Frenzy one. That isn't the EP. I think Pavement and Stars is technically a little lower, but it's still in my top 50 favorite albums of all time. So let's be real clear about my commentary here. I do think it is their most maligned. There is a lot of commentary about this one as it's too all over the place. It's, and I think that's that story of Scott leaving kind of helps fuel a bit of that. Mm-hmm. So I think that, yes, that is potentially true, but I don't care because I don't know about you. How many of these songs are kind of favorite Five Iron Frenzy songs? And I know we'll talk favorite songs in the future, but how many of these songs are favorites of yours?
Yeah, I've got quite a few on here.
Yeah.
And I've always been made fun of for things I like. And so
Sure.
I'm at this point in my life, especially, I'm just like, if people are going to be negative about things that I like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't go in those circles. Like I like your podcast. It's very positive. Let's find the good in things. Like there's enough people being negative out there. I can't change that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dampen my enjoyment of something.
Yeah. And I don't know, for you, like, did this help? I mean, I think we all knew they were weird, but like this album is weird. Like there's some really weird humor that comes through on this album.
Yeah.
I mean, the song alone, like You Probably Shouldn't Move Here, that's just a weird, weird song. There's no way around it. I love it, but it's a weird song. The album cover, did you ever see the you can go look it up on YouTube, look up All the Hype the Money Can Buy, Five Iron Frenzy, and it's like a pre-video that they sent out to the Christian bookstores. It's taken from the photo shoot for this. So the photo shoot, if you know the cover of this album, it's Dennis dunking an ABA style basketball, and then the inside of the sleeve was them at a high school in Denver, and it's like, they're all dressed up in these goofy costumes. They lean into that on the video, and it's like, and it's not a music video. It's just like this little minute and a half promo video. But I think that's the other thing is like they really embrace the weird on this, and in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I saw 2 Halloween shows that they were dressed up at, but then I think they just dressed up at all of their shows.
They did. Yeah, that wasn't anything. That wasn't because of Halloween.
I was like, oh wait, it's a bajillion degrees out here at Cornerstone. They're still dressed up in Halloween costumes.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I agree. I think for me, that is part of this is a little bit of weirdness. A little bit of weirdness can go a long way to help me enjoy something. All right. So what is a reason for you that this album, still holds up or something that's still important to you 25 years later?
Yeah, I accidentally already answered it, but it's such
okay.
a snapshot of this very strange time that I don't remember things. I mean, I remember being pregnant. I remember having my son. Don't remember who I voted for. Doesn't seem like it mattered. Yeah, it was just such a weird time. And I think for our generation, where they're a little bit older than us, like I think that's what stuff we were dealing with.
Yep.
And I remember like news stories would always say that Gen X millennials wouldn't do as well as their parents, and like I felt that burden on my shoulders like all the time. Okay, like we're doomed a little bit. How do we go on with life when they've already stacked everything against us in some ways? So I like the silly, I like the weird, because it's fun.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But it is very interesting to go back to listen to all these songs, go through them verse by verse, try to figure out what they're talking about, what was happening then, and then see what's happening right now.
Yep.
And I'm like, they could have written this album last week.
Yep.
I'm like, what's happening?
You nailed it. You took that. That is my exact note is I think some of these songs have become more lyrically relevant in the last 25 years. And that's kind of crazy. Like I think about solidarity, right? Mm-hmm. Wherever you're at in church, like the divide in our country is really, really bad. And the divide in church is just as bad. Yeah. Like it is out of control. The phantom mullet. Mullets have become back. They've become a thing again. Little kids have them. No, I'm kidding about that one. But it is kind of crazy that mullets have become a thing again. But like that one's out there. Giants and the idea that like the economics are stacked against us. Like I feel it and I am terrified for what my kids are going to feel. Like my main goal for money at this point is I want to be able to give as much as I can to my kids. Like that's kind of become my main goal at this point until my kids leave my house, because I do think that the deck is so stacked against younger people, and Giants dives into that. It is a anti-capitalism song in 2000 from a Christian ska band. What the crap's going on? It's more relevant today than it was then.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then A New Hope, right? Like we're still dealing with that issue. Whatever you think about gun control, whatever, the idea that school shootings are still a regular thing in this country, that's horrifying. That is still a relevant topic, that like what we arm our kids with is there's a better hope. And I do believe in that. That's still, you know, we're going to talk about matters of faith on this show. And we're not here to argue. Like if Pam says something I don't agree with, we're not going to argue about it. If I say something, you know, that she disagrees with, she can call me out on it. That's fine. But like, I still do have a hope. I do feel like there's a hope for greater things. And I do believe there's a hope to be had in heaven. But I don't want to arm my kids with that as, well, you might get shot up in a school. Like, that's a sad state of affairs still to this day, no matter what anybody says. School shootings are bad. There's just no way around it. I can't believe I have to make this point in 2025.
Right. Yeah. The fact that Sandy Hook happened.
Yeah.
And nothing changed still. Yeah. I mean, it should have changed with the first couple, the one in Paducah, even before Columbine. But Sandy Hook and like what happened with that just devastates me.
Yep.
Devastating. All these, yeah.
So I think that's what makes this album still hold up. Yes, musically, it's a bit of a time capsule. Like there's going to be that part of it, because it is this weird transition from straight ska to kind of what are we doing? It's not quite their rock with horns that they would do on Electric Boogaloo. So yes, it is a bit of a time capsule when it comes to that. But these are some of Reese's, and it's mostly Reese. There's some other, Leonore writes Me Oh My. But I think it is some of his most, you know, it's still some of his best lyrics are on this album. Some of his funniest lyrics are also on this album. And I think that is what makes it stand up. Yes, you've got to look past some of the stuff that was going musically, but there's plenty on this musically that still is cool. I still think Solidarity is a really cool stuff. They had some bongos in this, which I know Kylan will hate. Sorry, Kylan. We'll see if you make it this far in a ska episode anyway. So if you do, let me know, Kylan, because I'll be impressed. You know, they add some the production shift from Fahrenheit to 451. That's something they had never really done before. They kind of started to play with that. You know, that's the sort of things. And like, one more thing that makes this hold up. I'm sorry, I'm just totally rambling now. But like, we'll get to Giants in a second. One of the reasons I think this holds up is 2000, nu metal and the rap rock thing is just taking off. The logical conclusion of Giants in the year 2000 would have been to transition to a rap rock breakdown to end that song, something like that. And I remember thinking at the time, they should have done that. That was cool. I was an idiot. They did the right thing. This actually makes it more timeless, the fact that it just goes weird and they just step into we're not going to do a rock opera, but we're going to do this weird ending with the weird singing at the end. It makes it something that kind of stands out, and I think stands up despite all of the other things. Just especially when you talk about that time frame. I think that's another time frame thing that's kind of going on in this album.
Yeah, well, it's so. I don't know how they got permission to just go creatively all over the place like that, because that sounds like, you know, other bands I've listened to talking about their process. Like, unless you're, you know, Fall Out Boy or something, you don't have that much control.
Yep.
Over what all you're doing. And I don't think it sounds dated. It's ska. Like, I don't know, like a ska song that just came out the other day and put that with this. And to me, it's all sounding fresh and fun. And
yeah,
it doesn't, most, you know, other albums you'd be like, no, this is definitely 2000.
Yep.
But I don't get that with these. With Vibration. Trouble can't tamper with the walls of the steel cushion bubble. Never your point to get people safe. You play yourself a box just because you're afraid. I'm not afraid to put the finger down. The grass all you do the preaching anyhow. We're going nowhere, and it's happening fast. A dim future, and a darker
So usually we talk about favorite songs, and I'm okay with us just like we can jump around a bit, but I'm also okay with us just kind of mentioning most of these songs. So that's how I think the way we handle this. We've started to do this more on the show recently, just because we have, and it's my show and it's Five Iron, and I'm going to talk about most of these. So do you have a favorite song off this album? Let's start there.
No, I have a list of favorite
Okay.
songs.
I have a list of favorite songs as well. So let's start with The Greatest Story Ever Told. That's the kickoff track to this album. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think it's a great opener in general. Even when I was living more of a Christian faith, I do tend to be drawn to songs in Christian music that reflect reality and difficulty of our lives while balancing it with a faith that while doesn't bring perfection, it can bring comfort. And so I do really like this song.
The lyrics on this song, I think, are just so amazing. Specifically, the bridge. I love the bridge of this song. It's all my dreams are slowly dying. I can count my years and scars. The only one that's never left me has carried me so very far. I've heard it said that you oh man, I've heard it said that he wastes nothing so beautiful to behold. The author of my hope is writing the greatest story ever told. I mean, chef's kiss. What a that's beautiful, not just lyrically and just its scheme and how it all works, but like, yeah, so many of us can count our years and scars. That is such a turn of phrase that I can so relate to. And I don't even think I've lived that hard of a life, but like the things that make me struggle. And like, yeah, I love the lyrics on this song. It's one of his best, in my opinion. It's one of his most underrated lyrical songs, in my opinion. So next, they go out of The Greatest Story Ever Told. They move into the song written by Leonore. So she wrote the lyrics on this one, and it's the song Me Oh My. What are your thoughts on that song?
I love it. It's so catchy. I just want to go to a ska show and just skank and dance, have a good time.
Yep.
And then it gets stuck in my head.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the song.
I've always joked that if I was going to start a production company, I would name it Me Oh My Productions, because I think it's a great little phrase. I'm not going to start a production company, so somebody else can steal that. Go ahead. Me Oh My Productions. I give you the rights. I agree. It's a great little punk rock ska song, uplifting message. I think it's based off of the psalm, but yeah, it's a great little song. I love the Leonore song. I love when she gets a track on every. She used to get a track on every album. I think they've kind of post reunion they haven't had that opportunity to do that, but I really love this song as well. It's a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I really like it.
So then they go into Solidarity. This is the one with Randy Stonehill on it. Again, this one's written by Micah. Gets a chance to write a little bit on this one, and then Reese also contributes. Again, Dennis wrote all of it. But this is kind of one of the first guests on this album that you start to hear. So I don't know, thoughts on Solidarity?
I love this song. I love the lyric, unity, not uniformity.
Yeah.
This, when I was listening to this on repeat, I kept thinking so much about the beginning of the pandemic, and when I was at work, I work with the public, and just the situations we were kind of put in, that you were sort of looking out for people in these very small little ways. Especially, I feel like we were very fortunate here in the Twin Cities that we had a lot of good protocols. Then we had George Floyd's death, and then had to even work harder to kind of connect with people. The way things are going with companies right now, I personally work for one of the most union busting companies out there. They're very aggressive, but I'm very like a worker, so I feel like a hypocrite here. But it's there's so many movements out there, and trajectory we're moving into is they're making everybody become uniform and the same. And to me, it's just, not only is it wrong, but it's boring. Like, people are so interesting and different, and trying to shove everybody into the same small box for power is just, it's gross and boring.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, this, resonates so much with even just what at the church level, like I do hate that there is this, I've said it before on a couple podcasts, like I've never really felt at home in evangelical spaces. Like I've just always had this struggle of I don't quite fit in. And I think I don't quite fit in because of some of the things that make me love Five Iron in a lot of ways. Like I've always been the weirdo in a lot of spaces, and some of my certain political beliefs just have not always fit in. I mean, I tell it all the time, but like in 2016, I remember at a Bible study event, like I was at a church event, and I said, I just can't vote for a certain person.
Yeah.
And somebody called me stupid, and nobody like stood up and said, hey, now we all know Caleb. Like just because he feels like he can't vote for a certain person doesn't mean but nobody did. It just kind of rolled, and I was so used to it at that point that, that sort of thing. And I think this is my struggle with the church today is just this, we got to make, uniformity, is more important than unity in a lot of ways. If you better look the part, you better act the part, you better, fall in line. And if you don't, you're not really a part of this and you should go. And I think that's bad for the church. I think it's potentially going to be the undoing of a lot of American churches, because I don't think the younger generation is going to stand for it as much. Although, who knows? I could be totally wrong, and I'm the old weird hippie.
I mean, good goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've talked about my church upbringing, that I went to all different kinds of churches, and every church had another church that they would preach against. And I'm just like, we're all on the same goal.
Yeah.
We should all be on the same page. Why are we attacking each other? We're stronger together than we are apart. And it's just what kind of power are we trying to go for? That's the goal.
Yeah, I agree. Well, then to go totally off the rails and get really silly, next song is The Phantom Mullet. So we go into that. And this is the drummer Andy. He gets some of his first writing credits on this album, and I think with Five Iron in general. I think he had contributed a little here and there. But so Andy and Dennis are the main music writers on The Phantom Mullet.
I enjoy it. It's really fun. I don't know what's happening in this song.
Sure.
I was trying to Google things. I think it's a reference to Freebird.
I mean, it's making fun of people with mullets. There's just no way around it. That's what it is. Okay. It's straight up just making fun of the 80s guitar rock, Leonard Skinner diehard guy who's got a mullet. That's all they're doing is just making fun of that the entire time.
But we live in Minnesota, and they have competitions for who has the best mullets and hockey hair.
Yeah. It's just, but I don't know. Feel the power of the Phantom Mullet. White metal burn of the Phantom Mullet. I did that with no lyrics, by the way. Just remember that. I mean, that is the joy of this song. This is them leaning into it. So we're four songs in, and then they just lean completely into the silliness. Like, because that's all this is meant to just be silly fun.
Okay.
And it's hilarious to me. I mean, it's still, to me, is one of their funnier songs, because it's just making fun of the kids who beat me up in high school. And I love it. That's hilarious to me.
So I take it you did not have a mullet.
No. I mean, I've had long hair. I mean,
right. That's a difference.
Yes. I mean, last October, I cut 14 inches off my hair. I mean, so I've had long hair before, but I've never had a mullet. I've never had hockey hair. I've not at all. So
well, good.
Yeah, I can laugh along with it. So after the Phantom Mullet, then they get serious again, and they go to Ugly Day. And we were talking beforehand. This is a song about Reese's. I'm going to be sensitive. I don't think Reese will ever listen to this, so sorry, Reese, if I'm saying too much. But I think this is fairly well documented. So I don't think I'm saying too much, but like this was his first engagement that fell through, and then he had a second engagement, which there's songs off of the second Brave Saint Saturn album about. Then he eventually did get married. But so that's what this song is about. And it's one of the only romantic songs in the Five Iron Frenzy discography. There's, a Pre-Ex-Girlfriend, which is about the closest they come. And that's just clearly silliness. So it's an interesting song in their discography, and people love this song. How about you?
I do love it. I do love the slightly faster live version.
Sure.
A little bit better.
Yeah, I can be more down with that one probably.
But as somebody who had 3 long distance relationships, one that has ended up in a 26-year marriage.
You can identify with this, just minus the breakup.
Right. Well, there was 2 breakups in there.
Okay, so you really can identify with it. Oh, that's funny.
So, but yeah, I it makes me think of being young and
A
idealistic.
simpler time. A simpler time. Oh, that's funny. So
Yeah.
here's my bad take that everybody I've gotten ridicule for this take on Twitter, so I know it's a bad take. I don't love this song. It's one of my least favorites on this album, and maybe one of my least favorites in their discography. And part of it, so I'm going to tell a story. It's story time, everybody. As you know, this already hasn't been 50 minutes of me rambling on, but you get another ramble by me. They said at some point I did hear Reese say that he wishes they would have kept the Rhubarb Pie lyrics. And if you know the Cheeses of Nazareth, their kind of joke album, they released Rhubarb Pie on that. And that's Dennis's kind of, he wrote the music for this, and then he would write lyrics that just to kind of fill in the spots. And Reese would then go in and write lyrics over those spots. That's how they still do it today. If their new albums, I think Scott is mostly writing the music, but he puts in his own random lyrics, and then Reese takes them and replaces them with his, and that's still their writing process to this day. So they did that, and so that version, Rhubarb Pie, is on the Cheeses of Nazareth. It's very goofy. It's very funny. Reese has said he kind of wishes they would have just kept those. And for me, so I went to China. I went to college 2 years. My first 2 years out of college, I went to China and I worked with a Christian organization. I came home and I spent 5 years working in a special ed room. One of my favorite kids, a kid I worked with, he would always steal my iPod and want to listen. And one of the songs that he globbed onto was Rhubarb Pie. And he loved that song. So he would take my iPod and he would say, Caleb, Rhubarb Pie. Except for it was a little more mumbled. So it was more like Rhubarb Pie. And so I knew what he wanted to listen to. And he would listen to Rhubarb Pie on repeat over and over and over again, to the point that, iTunes used to track your listens. Rhubarb Pie was the second most listened to song in my library behind Every New Day. So it just kind of a hilarity that from my kind of connection to this song. So I do prefer the Rhubarb Pie version. I totally understand why they didn't do that, but so that's kind of a weird anecdote about this the song Ugly Day.
That is very funny.
So we'll move on from Ugly Day to the most controversial song on the album. And I will say, so we're gonna talk about Fahrenheit. And I know Reese doesn't love these lyrics at this point, and okay, that's fine. He has come out and said he wishes he didn't write this song. Let's talk about it though, because I don't totally agree with him, but it's his choice to have that. But he does not like this song at this point in his life. Okay. What are your thoughts on this song?
I do kind of love this song. And I think an apology song for being homophobic in 2000 is absolutely wild, especially from a Christian band.
Absolutely wild.
Absolutely wild. And I was kind of trying to remember, like, we didn't grow up with Queen. We were a Bob Dylan, Beatles household.
Sure.
Christian music. I only knew, like, Bohemian Rhapsody and
right,
We Will Rock You. But I remember when he died, and I remember the conversations about some of the men at that time that had AIDS that were dying, and it was starting to become a little bit more talked about.
Yeah.
It started like when Ryan White died in 1990, when we start having people dying of AIDS that had contracted it through blood transfusions. And it just, I don't know. My memory of what was happening then and trying to see this history of it with what we know now is one, it's really heartbreaking because I can't imagine the loneliness that people were going through, like to have fame and then to have people kind of dismiss you. And then to die in such a difficult way. It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But again, I am really impressed that he put his emotions out there on this song and apologized. Yeah. I think that's very brave for 2000. I mean, 2025 maybe, we should be already doing this for a while, but yeah, in 2000? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think his objection to it is that he at this point would not consider homosexuality a sin. So I think that's his frustration with the song, is that I think he believed that at the time. I don't think his views have shifted that much on that idea. So I think that's his frustration, is that he wasn't more bold in saying those things. I think, and if I'm wrong and Reese, you listen to this, my apologies. I'm making a bunch of assumptions because I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to be on the show and do an interview, and that's perfectly fine. You got enough crap going on in your life. But I think that's his objections at this point. But I think for 2001, I do think this is a great look at somebody understanding that one of my biggest frustrations is I hate when theology is used as a weapon. Mm-hmm. Theology should never be more important than people, in my opinion. Yes, theology informs our belief. It's important. If you're going to be a person of faith, it's good to have a solid idea of your theology. But if it ever stops you from caring for somebody, I think your theology should probably be checked. Even if you totally disagree with them and think they're the most evil person in the world, if your theology doesn't lead you to be compassionate and empathetic towards somebody, I think your theology is probably bad. And I think this is a great call out. I still think, I know it's cliche and there's a lot of baggage with it, the idea of hate the sin but love the sinner, and there's a ton of bad baggage with it. But I think if the church actually really, really was able to live that out, like, I think this is sin, I think it's bad, but I unconditionally love you and I show you love, and I don't think that me telling you you're wrong is actually the most loving thing to do, I think the church would be in a better place. This has gotten to be a horribly political episode. This is not what I was expecting, but I do think that is a message that still holds up. And I think, yes, the way he talks about it, the way he breaks down his own sin for the year 2000, this is a killer song. I still love this song. Mm-hmm. I'm glad he wrote it. I'm glad I get to listen to it still. And I love Queen. I've been a Queen fan for a long, long time, and it's a great connection point between him and a hero of his. So I know he would be disappointed in the song now. I hope he can cut himself a little more slack and just embrace it for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe it got put out on a Christian label in 2000. Yeah. Honestly. But yeah, it was mind-boggling to go through this. Yeah.
Frank Tate was always pretty willing to let them do what they wanted, as long as he... This is my understanding of Frank Tate, and again, if he ever wants to go on the show and defend himself, he was really just worried about making money. And I think by that point, it's shortly after this that 5 Minute Walk really just becomes 5 Iron Frenzy. I think at this point, like, Frank Tate had realized that, like, 5 Iron was kind of his golden goose. He kind of had stolen them from Tooth and Nail. Not stole them, but, like, there was a lot of record companies kind of vying for their signature, and he got them. And again, the record label had basically just become... 5 Iron Frenzy. 5 Minute Walk kind of turned into only 5 Iron Frenzy. By the end, it really truly was just them. So I think he was most concerned with, I mean, he clearly had a heart for people and wanted to tell people about Jesus, but if it made a profit, I think he was on board, is a really cynical way of looking at things, kind of from some of the stories that Reese has told on his podcast. And so I think he was kind of like, look, they've done it before. This seems to connect with people. Go ahead and do it. And, you know, I think he felt like it was veiled enough that it wasn't like, you know, it was saying a message that he could get behind and could sell. And I think I think they knew their fans by that point and knew what people would be okay with and kind of even excited about.
I mean, when you open your first album with the song that they opened with, you know, kind of know what you're getting into a little bit.
Exactly.
I told my sister we were doing this album for the episode, and she said that she thinks about every now and then how she ended up being so liberal. And we looked at each other and both at the same time, 5 Iron Frenzy.
It definitely had, I mean, there's definitely a type that has been attracted to them from the beginning and still is. And I get it. If you're not very liberal, it's probably harder to connect to some of their stuff, you know, and it probably was easier back then because it was a little less overt, but you know, it is, you know, I think they definitely attract a type. That's for sure.
Yes.
All right. So they make the beautiful transition to 451. It's this nice little production thing that they do. And so 451 is the next one. It's a Fahrenheit 451. Obviously, the song is called Fahrenheit, and then 451. Fahrenheit 451 is one of Reese's favorite books. So that's the connection here that's made. What are your thoughts on 451?
Such a wild song for 2000.
Yeah.
And very relevant for right now. So I know that early days of pop rock radio, payola was a huge issue. And then I remember in the early 2000s, Clear Channel was the big baddie. And it was hard for bands to get on the radio. And I've never read the book where we started reading it this week.
More relevant today than it was when it was written.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was just and up until a few years ago, I actually thought that the Nazis had burned Bibles.
Hmm.
I've only recently found out what they were actually burning, and so it is very, very chilling to be watching these things in real time. And again, we're in a very liberal blue state. I had to actively go vote in the Twin Cities to go vote against library banners
Hmm. Yeah.
a few years ago. And they kept it on the down low. Like, no, they weren't talking about it. You had to know somebody who knew what was going on
Yeah.
to even find out about the vote.
Hmm.
So it's incredibly relevant.
And I think this one, like what he's writing here, is kind of very much kind of a pointing a finger at the church. I mean, like, again, this is another one where the bridge is just so killer to me. Is the radio is preaching a candy-coated goo, the record companies and the TV too. No one rocks the boat, terrified of trouble, can't tamper with the walls of the sterile Christian bubble. It was never your point to get people saved. You pad yourselves with fluff just because you're afraid. I'm not afraid to point the finger now. The choir's so used to the preaching anyhow. I mean, that bridge is so great, in my opinion. Just really breaks down kind of this idea that, like, yeah, we're not, we're not doing the right thing in the church. We're padding ourselves with riches. And I go to a big church that's got a big building. That's the vast majority of churches are, the big majority of their budget is spent on facilities and people. And, there's people who make their millions off of Christianity. Is that a good thing? I don't think Christianity is ever meant to thrive in a place where it makes you richer and more powerful. I just don't think it's supposed to. And I think this is a song talking about that.
Right. Well, and is this the time frame from what was the prayer of Jabez or something, or prosperity gospel starts showing up a little bit more?
I
I
mean, yeah. So you're right. The prayer of Jabez breaking through to the blessed life was released in the year 2000. So yes, this is kind of that rise of prosperity gospel sort of stuff coming through. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we've had a couple serious songs and we move back into the silliness. You probably shouldn't move here. A song that they still play live very, very regularly. What are your thoughts on You Probably Shouldn't Move Here?
This song so much. So great. I love Reese's Carnival Barker voice. And then, so to prepare for this, I had this album on loop for like 2 weeks,
Sure.
which meant I had Get Out of My Yard and Give Me My Chickens on loop in my head
Yeah.
for 2 weeks. And so the other day at work, so first off, our staff we have a lot of fun together. We're very zany. So I like go bust into the back room, get out of my yard, give me my chickens. And I go back there and somebody's like, yeah, vice president's here right now. Like,
Wow.
of course he is. And I'm like, I've never had a normal interaction with this man because I am who I am. But I was like, well, at least he's used to it by now.
He was on board with getting the chickens out of the yard.
Dog, it is hilarious. I also want to go back to Denver. So.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, it's one of those fun songs, and it's interesting that it became a staple of their live set. Like, it's probably the song that after I'd seen it done live a number of times, I was like, I'm good, guys. I don't need it. But yet I'd still dance to it every time. And it's like, let's mix in some of those other ones, has always been my thought. But it is such a, like, it became one of their quintessential songs in a lot of ways. And that is kind of the amazing thing about this, is you do have, we'll get to them, but like a new Hope, World Without End, You Probably Shouldn't Move Here, all really became songs that they regularly played live in concert. Mm-hmm. Like, those were really songs. So you get three, and the Phantom Mullet. You have 4 songs that really were staples of their live set till the breakup. I think less so now. They don't really close with World Without End. They used to always close with A New Hope, World Without End, and Every New Day. They don't really do that. But Fahrenheit then, in post breakup, has actually moved back into the set. They closed a few sets with Fahrenheit, actually. Farsighted. I got that wrong. They did not close sets with Fahrenheit. They were closing with Farsighted. But, you know, again, like these were staples of that pre-breakup Five Iron Frenzy. Mm-hmm. All right, so we move to another serious one. So we're jumping all over the place. And we're going to talk, what are your thoughts on Hurricanes?
I have down that I just think it's a gorgeous lament of a song. I don't know if it's about something specific, but I feel the lyrics and, you know, I'm like, I got to put it in some playlist somewhere where I'm having a day and I just got to throw it on. And
yep.
Even if I can't cry, maybe I can feel like I'm crying.
It feels like the beginnings of where he's going to go with Brave Saint Saturn. Like, I think he had some of these lonely songs building in him. Like, because that's kind of what I see it as. It's a song about loneliness, which the Brave Saint Saturn trilogy is all about that. So it really feels like something that he's like going to get to. And so, you know, it's an interesting song in their discography. Again, if you're going to say they threw a little too much at the wall and cut some things, maybe it's a song you can cut. You throw it on an EP after it comes out. But it is really, I think it is where eventually Reese is going to go with Brave Saint Saturn, although not as mariachi. Now we're moving on to the big one. Well, one of the big ones. Maybe my favorite song off the album, Giants.
I love this song. It feels like it was written for today in our political climate. You and I met because of Twitter.
Yep.
And it was partly because of Eric's
little tournament.
Yep. But then you were like, no, I love Five Iron Frenzy. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to be friends at some point. So, but it's been wild to see in real time, like Twitter being bought by Musk and then just being destroyed.
Yeah, it's tough.
I was involved in so many little communities and they've like literally all been taken away except for hanging out with the Christian music guys. That's like all I've got left. I had book communities, social justice communities, local communities, gone, just gone. Yeah, it's really probably shouldn't still be on there, but again, we've got a little community, and like I feel like in your own little way with this podcast, like you are doing something to combat what's going on right now.
Yep,
we're connecting, we're talking about these things, and I'm like, they don't want us talking about these things. Just put it out there.
I found my way through it. I do struggle with it. And like, yes, this idea that like I work in corporate America, but I feel this, like I feel bad when I support big companies, but I don't have a whole lot of other choice. Like I just don't. And I have kids that I need to get the best deal for me, which is, you know, kind of what this song is talking about. I think we already talked about the breakdown at the end and how it just goes weird. It doesn't try and turn into 2000s rap rock, which I think is a blessing to the song.
Yes. Because
I think if it would have gone into that, it would have been bad. But this is, again, another one where, again, in this album that's got some musical things that are a little all over the place, it has some of their best lyrics. And I know Leonore had a hand in this lyrically. So this is another song that she gets, I don't know if she gets a writing credit on it, but I know she has talked about that there's a line from this that she wrote on.
Okay.
But again, it's some of Reese's best work and Leonore's as well. Mm-hmm. So kind of as the song ends, like it's, oh, don't you cry for the mom and pops, nothing but dry eyes for integrity's demise. Hulking machines grind as whistles blow. Corporate Darwinism crushes everything below. Advances in efficiency, increasing productivity are narrowing the margin for liberty. This house is haunted. This is where the little girl comes in and she says this part. This house is haunted by the ghost of Adam Smith. 2000, I had no idea who Adam Smith was. The Wealth of Nations, which I believe is the book he wrote, and the further death of innocence. To rule the world, the desire of every man, the earth is shaking, there are giants in the land. See the blood-red sky is rising on the broken carnage of the darkest days. Giants locked together arm in arm, pushing all the meek out of the way. And it's like, again, this is a 2000s mainstream Christian album calling out against the harm of capitalism. Yeah. And I wish I was more punk rock. I wish I could do more to... I do think late stage capitalism is scary to me. I'm scared for the capitalistic society that will chew up my children and spit them out if it can. That basically people have been turned into transactions and numbers and values, and like how much are you worth is what we're putting the highest price on. That is scary to me.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that this song is more relevant today than it ever was back in 2000. And it's incredible.
Right. Well, and that they had the foresight from back then. Because I'm thinking, I mean, I know some of the stuff that was going on with the company I'm at, but I mean, nowhere near what's going on now. My husband's company that he was at back then, how they kind of changed over the years, but it wasn't happening then. But, you know, we have a whole movie, You've Got Mail, about, you know, a big Barnes and Noble type bookstore wiping out little indie bookstore. You know, and where I'm from in Pennsylvania, we got a super Walmart in mid 90s and it wiped out downtown.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it was happening and it's just gotten worse and worse. And the conversation I'm having with customers, like, well, I'm trying not to go to Target now. And I'm like, well, yeah, like, but then where do you go? Because everything's a big corporation at this point.
Yep. It's really tough. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to buy things from these big, if I can find a mom and pop store to go to, I'd love to. I just can't always. Right. And it's like, it's tough. And, you know, so yeah, I wish there was more answers to it, but yeah, I think this is the prophet-esque nature of this song is pretty amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We got to fly through a couple here because we're way over an hour and I'm talking too much. So the next song then is the title track song. It's All the Hype That Money Can Buy. It's a song that I can kind of take or leave. I'll be honest. I potentially would have thrown it onto an EP again, just because this thing is pretty long, 45 minutes. Again, I think this is them kind of trying to figure out what they were trying to do and a little bit of that. It's not a song that really hits me super hard. I think it's, again, pointing stuff that they would point out throughout their band's existence, the idea that they didn't want to be rock stars, especially in the Christian space. I just think they never felt comfortable with that. But, you know, that's my opinion. Sorry, I'm dumping on songs. But what are your thoughts on all the hype from this album?
It is my least favorite, but okay. I don't skip it.
I wouldn't skip it either.
And I definitely think it's an important social commentary on the rapidly changing landscape of what was happening in music back then. You know, we're starting to get into, you know, TRL and getting these huge pop stars who, you know, end up not really having much autonomy. The movie Josie and the Pussycats comes out the next year, which is pretty much this song.
Sure.
And how like marketing kind of takes off to try to get us to buy more things. And so, you know, you're kind of, it's another bridging between like, you got Woodstock 99 and the chaos and horror of that.
Yeah.
Between, you know, Josie and the Pussycats and like looking at that as the middle of these other art forms, I feel like it gives a bigger picture of what was happening back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't skip it, but yes, it's probably, you know, it's probably one of the songs that, you know, again, it's another one of those things where I think they're throwing everything at the wall and they're seeing what sticks. Speaking of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, it's not unusual. It's the next song. It's a cover of a Tom Jones song. It actually not written by Tom Jones, by a guy named with the last name Reed and Miles. I'm sure they wrote a bunch of pop songs back in the day. And this is another one. I'll just go like I can take or leave. I like covers when they're a little more unique. Like this just feels like them playing that song. It doesn't feel as much of a cover as much as just their version of it. And it's kind of the same. Yeah. That's kind of my issue with it. But I understand also why people think it's super, super fun.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I just think it's fun. I like their covers, you know, whether or not they're doing anything interesting with it. But it was also a very weird time period. The lounge music was kind of resurging.
Yep.
And I was too young. I don't know what was going on. I'm like, I don't know. I'll go dance to this song.
Yep.
But I have no connection to lounge music as any kind of thing I actively pick out.
Yeah. I think they thought it was fun. I know Reese has said that he wishes their covers were a little more unique. I think he, like I said before we were recording, like, I think it'd be fun for them to cover John Denver or The Cure or something a little more doesn't just totally mesh with them. And then you get what I think more of a cover is sometimes. But, you know, it's fine. I also will say the Tom Jones appearance on The Simpsons is pretty great. All right, we get to two of the biggest heavy hitters here. Some serious stuff too. So the next song is A New Hope, obviously about the the Columbine shooting, and kind of Amy was Micah's younger sister, I believe, and she was one of the kids who was trapped in the choir room or the
Yeah.
cafeteria. She was trapped in an area as the shooting was happening, so kind of based from her perspective in a lot of ways. Obviously, a song that was close to them, and a song that they played live. Now they don't play it really anymore, but yeah, I think again for 2000, what a heck of a song.
I think this and the whole situation around how Christian, this I think is the turning point for me with what I was kind of viewing as Christian capitalism.
Hmm.
Um, there was a bunch of songs that came out about um, Columbine from Christian artists,
Hmm.
and there were books, there were all these things, and it felt so gross to me
Hmm.
that first off, nobody was asked if they were a Christian, and nobody said yes. And
Hmm.
so first off, they're capitalizing on a lie,
Hmm.
and that just it sat so poorly in my soul. And I love that this is almost a first person experience with it. It's honest. You know, you get the heartbreak, but you're like, but we have to have some hope somewhere. This is the only way we get through this. We have to have
Yeah.
some hope that it's going to get better, which is that's what I've been learning with. I read a lot of books by Black women activists, and a lot of it comes down to we might not see the change in our lifetimes,
Hmm.
but we have to have hope that if we keep doing the work, something will get better at some point.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, it was such a huge turning point for me personally. But yeah, I that persecution complex that I felt like I had in
Hmm.
high school, and to see it kind of play out on a national stage and then have it to not even be true, but at that point the damage is already done. um, yeah, it was a huge turning point.
Yeah, it's a heavy song, and again, it's interesting to get such a heavy song on a relatively fun album. Like, I mean, that's the interesting thing about ska music in general, right? Is that
Yeah.
it's fun, and then you have this like super super heavy song, and like yeah, it's again, I think this is another one that Reese potentially would write differently now.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he would have more of a focus on like, because I think at the time it was like, there's two stories. One is I have a live show of theirs from Holland where they
Mm-hmm.
went over to Holland and they played this set, and he's kind of like, everybody in the States is talking about video games are bad, and parenting is to blame, and he's like, I think all those things are potentially bad, but like what this really shows is that people's hearts are dark. And I
Mm-hmm.
think he still believes that, but I think he would also now add in the idea that like I think he would add more gun control is a problem. So I think
Yeah.
it's one of those songs where I think he had probably had bigger visions, but kind of had to put it, still in a acceptable frame. Because it's interesting that they don't do this song anymore, even when they
Yeah.
do kind of their older sets. So, and I don't know. I'm purely speculating, but I think it still is a song that holds up for me as
Yeah.
something that feels not just like something as a part of my childhood, although I was in college when Columbine happened and I was in
Mm-hmm.
college when this came out, but like there is something still that resonates with that song for me, and just how it kind of picks at that issue. And again, for a Christian band at the time, it just feels like another thing they pushed some boundaries, I think,
Yeah.
and
Christian
it's
boundaries.
hidden in this unique musical album, these kind of
Yeah.
these intense lyrical moments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they would have written this song probably shortly after everything happened. I mean, they didn't know that it wasn't ever going to stop.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
mean that it's specific
Hmm.
to a very specific law in what, like 1996, that allowed the guns, certain kind of guns.
Hmm.
And they wouldn't have known that. I mean, because now they've done another song,
Yep.
uh, at least one more,
Renegades.
Renegades.
Yep.
Yeah, until this shakes apart. I mean, I had my kids in charter school, but every day I dropped them off and every day I picked them up. I was just like, I gotta tell them how much I love them. Like,
Yeah.
my sister works in a school. Like, it's just anything can happen anywhere, but
Yep.
it's hard to shake that.
Yep. my last thought on this album is it's sad to me that in schools you now have to, and I homeschool my kids, although one of my kids is going off to high school next year. We're putting him basically in full on high school. And like, it's sad that like, yeah, I'm going to have to talk to him. And again, I think he's probably very safe, but like, I think it's sad that they have to do shooter drills, just like they have to do fire drills. Like, it's a sad state of affairs. I don't think anybody would say, no, that's good. And I know everybody's going to blame different reasons. I'm not here to argue about that, but I think it's a sad state of affairs that this is still an issue to this day in our country. And it has me a little, it's one of the reasons. I mean, we're pretty, he's old enough, he's mature enough, but like, yeah, I'm not thrilled about sending him off to a school where, I think there is a risk. There's more of a risk than him, running into that at that school than there is at our house, because it'd be impossible at this house unless somebody broke down the door, and that just doesn't happen in the suburbs, no matter what somebody else might tell you.
Yeah.
It's very, very, it's even more rare. So, so a little bit of levity coming out of this song. Before we go into one more serious song, and I'm sorry, this is going way long because I have a lot to say, and Pam's bearing with me. I will say in that Holland show, he's introducing the song, and everybody in the crowd doesn't necessarily speak great English, but it's this Christian music festival, and so he makes a comment about this next song. He makes some comment about like, it's this shooting that happened, or it's what happened at Columbine. And this guy yells out, "Yeah!" You can hear it in the audience, because I don't think he understood what was happening. He's like, and like a bunch of kids, I think he quotes the number. I can't remember how many people were killed in Columbine. So like Reese is telling the story in the background. You can hear this small pop-up of cheers, because I think they're just cheering for the English person who's talking in between the song, because the rest of the festival is probably people like Stephen Curtis Chapman saying like, "We're ready for the great adventure." And then everybody's like, yeah. And so it's just, it's a kind of a weird, it's hard not to laugh at it every time I listen to that concert. I have this bootleg version of the concert. It's hard not to kind of chuckle at the Dutch folks cheering on Columbine, probably not really knowing what they're cheering on. So that's another weird, funny connection I have to that song. All right. So we come to the final song, and Five Iron's always been great at closing songs. And I'll say it, this is one of their best. Absolutely. World Without End closes out the album, and it's got the bells. It's got the choir. It's Dennis, I think, wrote most of the music for this, but I think Micah also helped, and so did Sonny. And I think Reese did actually too. And this is a killer song. It's one I wish they don't really do live now, because of the just in the changeover of the band. I wish it was a song that they still would do live more often.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I've seen it live and gotten to sing along with everybody doing it. It's gorgeous. I love it as a finale. And you and I've talked enough. Like I couldn't listen to like any praise and worship.
Yeah.
Very well. And now I'm like, hey, I've processed enough, and I can have a moment with this song. And I never stopped listening to Five Iron, just because they were so authentic and so honest about things, and it never felt forced. But to be at a place where I'm like, I can sing this song and mean it to some degree.
Yeah.
Whether it's the same experience I was having 25 years ago with it or not. I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful I've gotten to see it live. Yeah.
Yep. It is, again, I'm just going to say, this is one of those lyrics that still, there's a couple moments. There's a lyric from the lyric that I read from The Greatest Story Ever Told. So the first track. And then the lyric, some of the lyrics from Giants. So those are less of a spiritual impact. There is a lyric here that I'm going to read. This was my, do you remember when you used to put email signatures on your Yahoo email?
Yes.
Then everybody went away from that. For years this was, and I would email occasionally like adults for something, and that would be on there, and people would be like, "Who is this Reese Roper?" Because the poetry in this line, it's something that whatever theologically happens to me and how much I've done a little deconstruction. I go to a very evangelical church, but I've had some changes of view. This idea is probably this and Every New Day are still probably some of those cornerstones of kind of what I believe theologically. And it's the very spark that burns the stars drew near to me today. The God of everything that is whispered in my ear that his love is boundless. It's perfect. It's it's a perfect lyric.
Yeah.
It's just, that is what I want my kids to know about God, that the God of the universe has come near to you. He loves you. He made everything, and he loves to whisper in your ear how much he loves you. And his love is boundless. It's never ending. You cannot run away from it. And I love that. And that is still something that, whatever happens with Five Iron, wherever my, I envision being a 65-year-old fake punk rocker, still thinking about World Without End and still being able to hum that tune and say that the God of everything that is whispered in my ear, that his love is boundless. I love it.
Yeah, it's perfect. I love it.
You might think that I'm lying to listen what my uncle's gotta say. Well, I'm an old smelly geezer. You know what's wrong with that? If you got a boil, you can pick it. Get out of my yard and give me my chicken. Some people think you're saying it's square, they're wrong. Just wait and see. Now I got
Whew, we made it through all the songs. We're an hour and a half in. Pam has been gracious enough to sit with me through all of my ramblings. Pam, somebody has not checked this album out 25 years later. What are you going to tell them? What are you going to tell them why should they go back and check this album out?
I think the early 2000s was such a weird time to be a young adult. And I think this album just captures that so perfectly. It's beyond timely. It is perfect for the season that we are in. I mean, I go to work and I'm listening to Solidarity and I'm like, how do I in my day-to-day life support people when I also have to feed my my family?
Yep.
I've got a kid still living at home in his 20s, and another one we help out as much as we can. Like, capitalism isn't kind to any of us.
Yeah.
So how do we thwart that in our day-to-day lives? And I think this is a great album to rally yourself, and it holds up. It does not sound dated to me. I mean, it's weird.
Right. It's got some weirdness to it.
But
Yep.
ska is fun, and that you can have they're a very intelligent band, and for so much of the Christianity that I was exposed to growing up, so much was, and I'm seeing a lot of this now, is just anti-intellectualism. It is refreshing to be like, look at all the book titles and look at all the things they're referencing. And I'm, like I said, I have 7 tabs open on things I was Googling that I still haven't figured out everything they're talking about. And that's the kind of stuff that I love to do. So I'm like, I feel like I'm learning things. I feel like I've gotten a little bit of hope. I've gotten a little bit of joy dealing with the realities. It's not fun all the time. It's hard. But I feel like it's a very emotionally well-balanced album for all the chaos that it is.
Yeah. Yep. Chaos is a good word. And I will say, I don't know if I would start, if somebody was like, why do you like Five Iron Frenzy? I'm probably not starting here.
No.
I probably am going to give them something that's a little more, that kind of eases them into the water of this chaos. But I will say, if you kind of understand, I think if you kind of know a couple of these things, right, that this is a band transitioning, they've lost their main songwriter. Yes, Dennis had helped out. He wasn't new to this, but like, this is a transition for the band in trying to figure out where they go. 2000, now in the Christian scene, ska is still alive and kicking. In the secular scene, ska is dying off, if not totally dead at this point. Yeah. So they're trying to figure out some of those things. They're playing with a lot of things. I think they had more money than they had ever had going into the studio, obviously with some of the guests on this and some of those things. So they're really trying to kind of find their footing, knowing those things, knowing that this is a little bit of chaos. It's a little bit of them throwing everything against the wall. If you can look past that, the lyrical content alone is something that is digestible and makes you think. You may not come out of this agreeing with everything. That's fine. but there's that sort of thing. There's these funny moments. There's these introspective moments. There's these moments where they're starting a conversation about social issues, about church issues, about spiritual issues. That there's enough there to kind of make this something that I don't think is just throwaway. And so I think it's a later in if I'm introducing you to Five Iron Frenzy, I'm not starting here unless you're like really goofy. Like if you're really, really goofy, yeah, let's put on You Should Probably Not Move Here and we'll just get it out of the way. We'll all scream, get off my yard and take me and give me my chickens at the vice president of our company and it'll all be good. But I think, in general, I wouldn't start here, but I still would say, if you get into this band even a little bit, this is an album that you need to go back to. And yes, the context helps. But if you can look past a bit of them trying to figure some of this stuff out, yes, am I being way more gracious to this band than I would to maybe another band that I'm not as into? Absolutely. I'm well aware of my bias, but you can't tell me that you can read the lyrics to Giants. You can read the lyrics to World Without End, the greatest story ever told, and not step away and go, wow, this band was doing something special. They were trying to push the envelope. They were trying to say something. And then we're also able to have a little fun in between. And I think that is what is powerful about this record, even 25 years later. Well, there it is. That's our breakdown of All the Hype the Money Can Buy by Five Iron Frenzy. Again, released April 25th, 2000, so it's celebrating a 25-year anniversary. Pam, I know you're hanging around on Twitter. We already had that conversation. Where can people find you on Twitter? And then I think you're also on Blue Sky too, right? You've semi-transitioned over there. I think it's the same username, but what is it?
So I am hovering ladle on Twitter, and I think that's my actual name. I think the Blue Sky is in my profile.
Oh, really?
Twitter, so I don't want to throw that out there. Or message me on Twitter and I'll give it to you. But I don't know if I want throwing my whole full name out there.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, it's you can find her on Twitter. It's easy enough. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I probably should really, really preface people like, you're going to come on a Five Iron show. You're going to get full on Manic Caleb. So thank you for sitting with this. Just so we're clear, like, I don't know how long this episode will actually be. There's like at least 2 10-minute chunks that I'm probably cutting out because it's just me ranting about stuff. So just everybody just say thank you to Pam for, she endured this so you didn't have to. So yeah, thanks so much, Pam. I'm so glad you could join me. Perfect guest to talk through this album.
Thank you. Well, you let me ramble. You let me ramble about all the random things I Googled about it. And I'm like, if I get a Five Iron Frenzy show and a Starflyer 59 show, then I will be less fretful about not getting a Poor Old Lou show.
Yeah, the problem is I ran through the Poor Old Lou shows. I did like 3 of them last year.
I know.
Just bad planning on me figuring out a podcast. And
no, you're fine.
Not really knowing what to do. Yeah.
You had Scott, which no, but
well, that was the transition. That was a picture of the Eighth Wonder was he's like, I gotta talk about this. And I didn't have my format down yet. Yeah. So it's a weird show because it's just us talking about the album without the format. And so it's like I feel really weird listening to that show now. I'm like,
I think you should delete it and have Scott and I come on talk about it.
We can do it again. It's another 2 years. That's the other thing is the show's got to survive long enough. Is it 1 year? Okay.
Next year. Yeah.
I'll start looking at the calendar. If it falls on something, I've already had a couple people who are like, can we do this next year? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll get to it. Let me get through this year first.
What do you need to sustain? Like, do you need to set up a money tier on Patreon? What do you just time?
It's just the busyness of it all. Like, it's just the putting it together, keeping up on it. part of it is I want it to sound professional. I want it to sound good, and I want it to be well produced. And so it's just, that takes time. Like I don't just tear down the MP3 and upload it. I do the editing, and I like the music interspersed with it. And it's that sort of stuff just takes time. And so I think it's mostly the time is the thing. And, you know, I don't want to forsake my children and my wife for a podcast.
That's good.
Yeah, probably a good goal. So yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Pam. I really appreciate you hanging out with me for like 2 hours on a Friday night.
Thank you. Well, I had a great time.
Awesome.
Fun.
Thanks for listening to this extra long episode of the Album Anniversary Podcast. I want to say thanks again to Pam for joining me, sitting through this with me, enduring. I've messed that up twice on podcasts recently. Enduring my ramblings. I really, really appreciate it. Just great insight on this album. I love that idea that the time that this came out and how important it was. So thanks so much, Pam, for coming on the show. Really, really appreciate it. Let us know what you thought. What do we get right? What do we get wrong? What are your favorites from this album? You can find me on all the social medias. Caleb the Spy is pretty much where I am everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, easy to find. You can also email me at calebthespypodcast@gmail.com if you're interested in being on the show, or at least seeing kind of what shows are coming up and what shows I'm still looking for guests for, or looking for people who might want to join. Again, I've been doing double guests on certain albums. You can always email that email address, calebthespypodcast@gmail.com. I'm also on Patreon. That's the one place I'm not Caleb the Spy. You have to look for the Album Anniversary Podcast. Again, it's totally free. Just have another place where people can connect, just because social media is fickle and not everybody stays on it forever. We kind of got into that a little in this episode. Please subscribe and share the podcast. If you're so inclined, leave a rating or review. I've heard it is an effective way to spread the word and help podcast. If you enjoy this show, you might also enjoy the other podcast I do with my friend Scott. It's called I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. It's not just a podcast where we reminisce about our youth and our youth group experience. We're trying to interview fellow 90s youth group kids and find out kind of where they're at now and how that youth group experience has impacted their lives. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Sorry for the gap. I didn't put this part down.
I've caused most of the editing problems in this episode. I'm all over. I'm going to totally cut out the part where I swear at people. I'm causing my own problems. Oh, I muted myself before I started talking. Good job, me. Cheapers. I'm all over the place. Okay.